engage with all of you to keep you up to date as to all our progress in taking on the COVID-19 crisis. First, I'm going to allow for our language interpreters to give a brief introduction and instruction. For those who need interpretation, all you have to do is click that interpretation button on the slide. Okay. Once again, welcome. Tonight, we have a litany of panelists and representatives from the city and the school department. Give a special shout out to Superintendent Mary Skipper. I'll ask everybody to wave, say hello, and I'll welcome them all because everybody's working extremely hard. And I haven't had the chance to meet with them a long time, but we've been living and working in a virtual world on your behalf. So very happy we could all join and be part of this conversation with you this evening. So first, let me just say, on behalf of all of us, the city and the schools, special thank you to everyone, all of you for doing your part and helping us overcome this unprecedented health emergency. The COVID-19 crisis has turned our lives upside down. It's imposed an incredible amount of emotional and mental duress on us because of the isolation of the situation, and it has crippled our economy. Your sacrifice and your work has helped us achieve the flattening of the curve. If you recall, at the beginning of this crisis, Somerville and communities around the Commonwealth and eventually the state had to move quick to be prepared for the oncoming surge of COVID-19 cases, so not to allow our healthcare system to collapse and to avoid really the moral conflict that countries like Italy faced. And they're the second best healthcare system in Europe, where people actually, life and death decisions are being made in the hallways of Italian hospitals. We've succeeded in that. And I'll talk a little about that. So in Somerville, in this slide that's before you now, there are a couple of points, references. The orange bars represent the number of new confirmed cases as of today, this evening. You can see there are 829 confirmed cases and 595 people of those confirmed are recovered. And sadly, we have lost 23 people in our community. And in Massachusetts, we lost more than 6,100 people. I think that's important to keep in mind as I've had conversation with folks over the reopening of the economy, and I'll hear, well, it's only 1% or a small percentage of population. More than 6,100 people in Massachusetts have died, and that number could easily reach 8,000 in August. So we need to remember those are souls who are part of our community, part of our families, and part of our lives. So in Somerville, you can see the orange bars dictate the number of confirmed cases. The orange line is the cumulative number of cases in our community. And you can look by the orange bars. If you drew a distribution curve over that, it's pretty consistent with the rest of the state, as you'll see shortly. But I do want to be very clear about the fact that these cases that you see here on this slide likely only represent a fraction of the total number of cases. It doesn't represent everyone who's been exposed to the virus, and certainly not everyone who's been ill. And we're still not certain how many people totally died, the total number of deaths. It could be higher. It's becoming more evident that the virus cases may have appeared earlier, as there's some evidence that people were appearing in hospitals early with pneumonia-like symptoms and more pneumonia-related deaths than usual in the months of February compared to last year. More will come as this crisis evolves and more evidence is divulged. When you look at Massachusetts, again, more than 90,000 confirmed cases. And you can see the blue bars on this slide represent the new cases by date, and the blue line represents the total number of cases confirmed cases in the Commonwealth, more than 90,000. So pretty consistent, the information you've been seeing. Again, this does not represent everyone who's been exposed, or likely, more than likely, all those who have been infected by the virus, as many people can be asymptomatic. Throughout this crisis and moving forward, we're guided by certain principles. Our decisions, our actions, our interventions will be grounded in science, led by expertise, the leading experts and epidemiologists and healthcare experts in the Commonwealth and the country. We want to be coordinated locally and regionally. We must keep equity in the lens. We must, and it's become painfully clear through this crisis, if anything, certain things have been reaffirmed for us, that the economy doesn't work for all, and the healthcare system is not serving all, and that those who suffer the most are our vulnerable populations. People at the lower end of the totem pole, our elderly, brown, black people, minorities, immigrants. And whenever we make a decision, as well as being informed by science, we need to keep equity in our lens to make sure we don't forget that. As we think about reopening our economy, we need to understand it's those vulnerable populations who, unlike those who work white collar jobs, will not be working virtually, but will be going out to provide the services we need. In many cases, they are the front line and critical workers. We also need to make sure we're always prioritizing our health and welfare first. In this case of the economy, as we'll talk, there can be no sustainable recovery of our economy without a healthy society. So these are the principles that are our guiding compass as we think about our decisions, think about the steps we want to take moving forward, so that we can come out of this crisis on the other side and avoiding the worst case scenario. You saw and read all the reports, I'm sure, the governor's reopening plan. And while a lot of good work was done by the Reopening Advisory Board for the Commonwealth, there are some parts of the plan which, frankly, in our opinion, have moved too quickly and has been brought and expressed in the concerns of many experts, many of those experts who advise cities like Somerville. So Somerville has been very deliberate, will continue to be deliberate, guided by science, thoughtful, and thinking about what sectors of our lives and our economy should be activated when. We will not rush to activate any sector and making the economy a priority, because again, we must first ensure health and safety, and we must ensure our steps contribute to a sustainable recovery. Without a healthy society, the economy will fail again, and it'll be crippled even further. That cannot happen without, again, the economy cannot be sustained without addressing all the public health issues. So our reopening phases do not align completely with the governor. In phase one, which started on the 18th, which is the same date as the Commonwealth, the governor's plan, there were parts of our construction that were activated. We set forth our own construction phased in schedule. And phase one is primarily large municipal projects who conducted a job hazard analysis and submitted an approved site safety plan, like the high school project. Hospital medical care facilities for high priority preventative visits, and houses of worship with a 10-person limit. And we'll talk about houses of worship, I'm sure, afterwards as we move forward in this presentation. There'll be more to come. The governor's plan calls for a minimum of 3 weeks between every phase. We will continue to evaluate the steps in the Commonwealth's phases and reconcile those guidelines against our priorities here locally, keeping the impacts of those steps in mind as they impact our community. So on May 25th, you'll see curbside retail and remote order fulfillment. This is consistent with the governor's plan. Additional healthcare providers as defined by the state plan. Certain DCR parks with appropriate social distancing practices and passive uses. I know there's been some question about organized recreation activities. We'll get into that during the conversation. June 1st, these other activities will start to be activated. And still to come will be announcements on how we're going to handle other personal services, i.e. hair salons and barbershops. And again, that'll be announced after our meeting we're having with that sector of those sector representatives tomorrow, and finalizing our analysis of the governor's guidelines. So I want to talk a little bit about our response and preparation and during as we move forward in the COVID-19 crisis. As this crisis was evolving, as the first cases were hitting the United States, Our team here in the city began analyzing what was and paying close attention to what was happening in other countries, in particular China and Italy. We engaged the consultation, the international experts to understand and look at our organizational structure in the city and to get better knowledge on how we can reprioritize that organizational structure to meet the needs and the demands of the oncoming crisis. So everything has been reorganized to take care of the most pressing needs here in the city and in the community. Every department is working together to make sure that everyone is kept safe in the community and that no stone is left unturned. And you can see from this graph, the Emergency Operations Center is headed up by Mr. Omar Bukili. And Joe Latham is on this call as a part of that incident command staff. And strategies filter into our operations and public health strategies, into our coordination across the region, and again, guided by experts in public health and epidemiology, as well as our emergency preparedness consultants. So we've put together a structure that has left us in a position to be nimble, to be quick, deliberative, and decisive as we move forward and continue to address the crisis. And I want to emphasize, we have not declared victory here. We're a long way from that. We're going to be living with this virus for years and dealing with this crisis for a long time. This approach to addressing it will give us enough flexibility to adapt and evolve as needed going forward. There are four more main areas of response: public health, local economy, and city and school services. So I want to talk a little bit about our public health strategy. Preventative measures such as mask distribution, face covering, and social distancing, and bringing the critical care decontamination system from the Patel company, the Somerville, as well as public sanitation priority, part of our preventive priorities. Expanding testing here in the city, developing a model that can be scaled up to other communities. In fact, it's being done across the region, making it available to all residents, whether or not you're insured, notwithstanding your immigration status, and whether you're symptomatic or not. You can get a test here in Somerville, no matter who you are, as long as you live in the city. All you have to do is call 617-65-2928 to make an appointment for testing, and you can show up at the mobile testing site, either on bike, on foot, or by motor vehicle at Somerville Hospital. And today we've launched, we'll talk about a little bit later, the first mobile testing site, I believe, one of the first in the Commonwealth, would allow us greater flexibility to go into particular neighborhoods. And it's part of our very aggressive engagement strategy, especially with our vulnerable populations, to encourage them to be tested. Our contact tracing efforts continue to grow and recovery support for those who test positive, as well as ongoing support for those who need guidance, food, counseling, supplies, as well as coordinate with our safe isolation for everyone who has COVID. Those who cannot safely isolate at home can stay at an MGH-operated hotel facility that we've worked in partnership with communities in our region, such as Revere, Chelsea, Lynn. Transportation is provided, meals, as well as medical supervision. And this is the type of aggressive platform we need to see developed across the Commonwealth. So as the resurgence hits us, better positioned, better prepared to deal with it strategically in an isolated manner, to isolate those outbreaks. And I think some of them incredible job to set that example for the rest of the Commonwealth. So that testing strategy continues to grow, become more robust, and combine again with contact tracing and case tracking and isolation and quarantine that put us in a position to understand how the pandemic continues to evolve, how the resurgence is spiking, in what areas it is, and to deal with it strategically. And I want to talk about supporting our residents. There's a lot that's being done in the city and schools, and I'm members of this panel, people present tonight on behalf of the city and schools, are going into some detail in response to your questions. We have made food access a priority, and I'll have more detail on this in the next slide. 311 has an incredible support team. We have a medical reserve, core members and other trained volunteers taking resident health and social service calls and offering support and referring to other staff as needed. We have work collaboratively on underemployment and cash benefits, SNAP, WIC, and access support. There's interdepartmental multi-level teams of dozens of city and school employees and volunteers helping residents connect to resources, apply online and fill out forms. Some call us and others we reach out to. Our school liaisons right now making up to 1,500 calls to families per week, checking on them regularly to understand how they're doing, if they're in need of any other essentials. There's housing assistance for renters and homeowners. Our Office of Housing Assistance is supporting numerous residents apply for rental assistance, as well as and support them through the housing crisis. They've set up, again, a network of nonprofit teams to work with people on housing assistance. Along with my office, the mayor's office, they're advocating at the state level for housing relief, such as mortgage forbearance and eviction moratoriums. And we're excited and happy our state delegation led that charge. And the city granted no fee grace period for payment of property taxes. The Somerville Cares Fund has been established, where we joined together with United Way to establish a COVID relief fund to aid those in really the greatest financial need and under the greatest financial distress. And more than 700, we've received more than 700 applications so far. This is a great way, I'll go into a little later, you can help out. And on senior services, again, we're concerned about our seniors as well as everyone, but they are some of the most vulnerable, and the highest levels and rates of death are occurring with our older populations. The Council on Aging is running multiple efforts from mass food distribution to social service supports, to cable TV questionnaire, and they check daily. They make hundreds of calls on a daily basis to all our seniors, checking in on them. Immigrant services, we're utilizing our cross-city and school team, working intensively to ensure language is not a barrier to access and information and services, whether it's for food access, housing issues, or for testing. This team is also providing an intensive social services and intensive social service support and application assistance services. I mentioned the residential eviction moratorium. We pushed this through before the state to ensure that no one would be pushed from their home during this public health crisis, where shelter is key to safety. And we understand fully, and now our goal has to be that we make sure we can help provide rental assistance to folks. So when the moratorium is lifted, people have the resources to pay their rent and stay in their homes. I want to strongly encourage everyone in the community to visit somervillema.gov/coronavirus help. There are far more resources in this comprehensive guide than we can get into right now, but we want you to know that we're here for you. We're here to support you and help one another. And there are a tremendous amount of resources available to you. So you can click on that link, visit that site. You can always call 311. So many in the community, and I want to thank everyone. Have asked us, what can I do to help? Can I volunteer? Can I make a donation? How can I play a role in helping my neighbor? Thank you for that. It's truly inspirational. There are many ways to help. You can donate to the Somerville Cares Fund, and I know that times are tough. Any donation helps, from $10 to $100 to beyond, whatever you can do. The link is here, and we appreciate the community and all the support. It's helping, again, the people under the greatest strain and duress. If you're interested in volunteering, and the many efforts we have to help our community, you can email Jen Mencia. Her email address is here. She can connect you with all the volunteer opportunities. And the city's still on a drive to donate homemade masks. You can help with that as well as part of our 10,000 mask drive. But again, there is a full list of ways to help at the link below, somervillema.gov/coronavirus help. Thank you for all of you who stepped up, and for those of you interested, please check it out. Plenty of people in need. And now I'm going to hand it off to the superintendent of schools, Mary Skipper, and talk about what we're doing collaboratively and as a community to help families and to help parents.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor. And, I just
Will
want
you
to
just unmute yourself?
Sorry. Says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear
we
me?
can hear
Yes?
you.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay,
Mary, you
great.
can move on.
Wonderful. So thank you. So first, I want to thank the parents on this call in this town hall, and just acknowledge what a difficult time I know it's been for all of you. I've watched my own children go through it as they're trying to juggle childcare at the same time that they're working, at the same time that they're trying to continue students learning. And it is a feat. And so I just want to say thank you for that. We appreciate the partnership, the flexibility, the trust that you've given us. And we want our students back. We miss our students. I talk to educators every day, and the first thing that they say is, when can we have the students back? So, we all want a common thing. The question is the safety and how we get there. When we closed the schools on March 11th and made that decision with Mayor Joe, we were acting on data, and we were putting student and staff safety first, and we will always do that. But I think then we had no idea what we were in for the duration that it's been. We've taken each step thoughtfully, really thoroughly, and really trying to figure out whether it's, delivery of services, or whether it's the remote learning plan, each step, knowing that we're going to probably need to use that as a foundation, not just for the moment, but to build on going forward for the summer, for the fall, and then certainly for whatever time it presents us going forward, that we're in the situation we're in. We always, as you know, in Somerville Public Schools, we start and end with the whole child. And so that is really how we've approached what we've done through the pandemic thus far. So this has really been about considering students' academic needs, their physical well-being needs, and their social emotional needs. One of the first things we did was to operationalize with the city how we could get food and material, things like diapers, out to families that were in need. We knew that we needed to take care of that food insecurity. So we operationalized 3 sites initially, and then a 4th, the West, the East, the Hill, and the Healy. And I can't say enough for Lauren Mancini, who's our food nutrition director, for Jeff Curley, the chief of staff, for Liz Doncaster, who's the director of student support. They're on the panel. They and the volunteers that have come every day, more than 4,500 meals to our families. And on Wednesdays, we do a special diaper distribution, and that line grows longer and longer each week. The next thing that we knew we had to do was connect the kids, connect the families virtually, so that they could access what we were putting together. So initially, until we could do that, we did a lot of paper packet to get it out there, but really this was about internet connection and devices. And so John Breslin, who's our CIO, and his tech team, Christine Trevisoni in special education, the director, everyone was hands-on to get the devices out to the families. So far we've given out about 1,500 devices. We worked very closely with the teachers and the teacher union to be able to do some surveying and find out what you needed as parents and as families. And what we were able to ascertain was to get a device to any family that identified we need something. So right now, we've given out Chromebooks, and then to the pre-K, to 2 students, we chose Amazon Fire. It's just a lot more durable and easier for the younger students to navigate. But that wasn't really enough. The device was one step, but then we stumbled into realizing that a good deal of our families, around 450, did not have internet access. And so really that needed a second level of operation with partnering with the city, working with John Breslin and his team, and Jeff Curley. We've been able through Comcast to get Comcast Essentials into some of those homes, and hotspots for those families that didn't qualify for Comcast. And really that's been a team effort. SFLC has been working very closely with families to navigate the process for Comcast. We've given out over 100 hotspots. We've connected 100 families. We still have families that we still need to connect. And so if you are listening and you don't have connection, we just ask you to please reach out to the contact on SFLC or to your school principal or teachers, that we can get you connected, because it's going to be important that you have that connection going forward. Once we sort of made it through what I would call kind of the level 1s and 2s, the next piece was the curricula. And this was something that we had been working on. This is an area we have to partner with the state. So we were working with the state and waiting for guidance. That guidance has come out in stages. We worked very closely with all of the unions in our school district to really develop a remote learning plan that we're proud of, that we think reflects a flexibility that's needed for families that we heard, but that also it's needed for our staff. You can imagine this was a huge shift. Even though we were doing a great deal of online and technology within the district already, the idea of taking pedagogy and moving it one day from the classroom right on to remote really was a big switch. And so some of that PD we had already started to do, thankfully, foreseeing that something like this would happen. So you will see that there's a variety of platforms. And I know this is one of the areas for families that's hard to navigate at first. But really, educators work with platforms that are appropriate for the age of kids that they're working with. So the younger kids will often use Dojo, sometimes it's Schoology, sometimes it's Google Classroom, and most recently we added Zoom in a protected environment. And that was based on a lot of parent feedback as well as educator feedback. So really we have a wide menu now in terms of the curricula. What you saw in sort of the March, April, and May was the state talking about deepening the standards. So really taking the standards that students had learned and asking them to go deeper, asking the educators to go deeper in that learning and not so much teaching new skills. That often happens in the March, April timeframe. And this really ensured that we had a little bit of time to go deeper for the students while we were still getting our other students connected. And then most recently, the state went to super standards. And again, we used teams of our educators to look at those standards and say, what are the standards that students are going to need from one year to the next that you see most commonly transferred? And that to go deeper with those standards and teach some of that material will benefit the student as they transition back into the fall in whatever form that will be. And so that has really been an incredible amount of work. Again, our academic team, Chad Mazur, our assistant superintendent, our departments, our ELL department, Sarah Davila, Christine Travasoni, special education, Lisa Q, and Ori Harrell, all of them came together with educators to really inform the remote learning plan that you see. And we're very proud of that remote learning plan. It's a plan that actually other districts have asked for since its inception. And we see it as a great foundation for building, even in the fall, to build toward and beyond. But knowing all of that, kind of primary needs, academics, we knew next would come social emotional. And this was something that we wanted to be ready for. So Liz Doncaster, who's our student service director, she and her team have mobilized with the counselors in the schools. And I can say that right now there's about 225 students / families who are currently getting the same mental health supports that they were getting previously, just in a medical kind of format. And that has been incredibly important. In fact, we've had families reach out. And again, I would encourage you, if that's something you're interested in, please go through your school to ask for it. It's available. But we have partners in Riverside, Cambridge Health Alliance, Home for Little Wanderers, all of whom have clinicians available. And we really can't understate or overstate rather the impact that this is having on students. Students, we hear things around anxiety, we hear things around, just missing that peer connection and development. So sometimes being able to talk to somebody and really being able to work through some of those feelings now, and then certainly over in the fall, when we return in whatever form that is, that will be a priority for us going forward. And then finally, student support service relative to SFLC. Again, Nomi Davidson is on the call. She's the head of it. Sarah Davila is also supports her as a director. And the SFLC coordinators, because of the deep relationship that they have in our schools with our families, you reached out to them immediately. Whatever your needs are, you reach out. We work with the city closely. If it's a need that's beyond us, it's, the city's there to help provide it. So it's really been that working partnership. Beyond that, a lot of the translation and interpretation services, the multilingual services that are often needed, SFLC is always there for that. And that's been important in again, connecting second language learners to the appropriate services that they need as they're trying to figure out for their own students how to get access to instruction. And then just in terms of the necessities like the foods and the diapers, clothing, things like that, housing, worked very closely with the city on that to make those referrals. So really, this has been a transformation of the district in a lot of ways, but in a very positive way in the sense that it's really emphasized the need to support the whole student. We say it, we do a good job at it. I think we're attempting to do an even better job at it. And that's a commitment that you have from us that we'll continue to do. Looking ahead, I think we all wish we had crystal balls and we don't. But, you know, looking ahead, there's some things to know. So first off, the end of the year celebrations, you know, some of our students are transitioning. Our 8th graders who are moving up, they're excited. They're going to the
Los
high
niños que
school.
van
They're
a
going to
pasar a
full
high
school.
school están
They're very, very
emocionados.
excited. And, you know, we don't want them to miss
No
out.
queremos que
So each of the 8th grades, and in the case of the Brown, the 5th grade teams have come together and they have just spectacular celebrations planned. Many cases they're virtual, but they also include things such as, you know, staff singing, awards on virtual. Some of them are delivering bags from the schools. Really, some of them are doing
Outros que estão
live
entregando
presentations
bolsas das
that they're able
escolas.
to
muchos han
kind of
hecho
film and then
presentaciones
back
virtuales.
to students. You know, really whatever they can do to help
Realmente lo que
celebrate.
puedan hacer
Que
para
podem
poder
fazer mesmo para elevar.
And then, of course, there's the high school. And I'm very happy to say, through the hard work of the mayor and Jill Latham, the
Feliz
director of
de
rec, we've been able to come
falar
together
sobre o
in a way
trabalho
that we can celebrate
duro
the
do
houses for the class of
prefeito
2020 at the high school by going into the parking lot at Dilboy, which we're going to decorate, have our stage there, and then in a very safe car parade, be able to do it so that the student can come out and cross the stage.
Vamos fazer o possível para ter um balcão para que o estudante possa.
Working with the class of 2020 and representatives for some time. The number one thing that they
Mary, we're going to pause for 1 second. We have a little technical difficulty. Just please 1 second.
okay.
Sorry, Mary, please continue.
So as I was saying, you know, one of the number one thing that the students, when we surveyed them from the high school, the seniors said, we want to cross the stage. That was the most important. And so we kept trying to figure out how to do this. And then coming together again with Jill Latham and with the mayor, we were able to figure this out. And so on June 10th and 11th, we will have the various houses, they have time slots, be able to celebrate that tradition of crossing the stage with the 2020 banner, with you know, the assistant principal and the house secretary, and in what is the closest celebration that we can give to the kids. The class of 2020, I can't say enough for. The class of 2020 at Somerville High really has defined servant leadership. They have in every way not complained. They have been advocates. They have, knowing that they're not going to benefit from the new building, at each turn they've asked what they can do and they have not complained. And this was sort of the final thing that we felt terrible we couldn't give them initially, but now we can at least give them something that will be meaningful to them as a memory. Full Circle Next Wave is also in the process of looking at whether or not that format would work for them. Scale is actually, our adult learning is going to actually do a virtual, which I think is very special, and they have a guest speaker that's very special. So I'll leave that as a surprise. In terms of the summer, you know, we typically start our summer planning in January. We have about 1,500 students across our programs. Those of you that have participated know it's a pretty big thing. Clearly, we're in a different space for this summer. Some of the things we need to just move forward with and move to virtual.
Tem algumas coisas que
We're
precisamos.
using an engagement tracker in each of the schools, and we really want to identify the students that are struggling the most and need the most support and to continue on in the summer. So we're going to be doing a reading one-to-one program. Special education will be doing a program. For our English language learners, we will also have a program. And then we're working on a virtual transition day right now for our early education, with the hope, you know, depending on what happens in the fall, that we'll be able to do something for those kindergartners as they transition back. In terms of the summer, we're also doing a lot of teacher summer PD. You know, we recognize, and our educators do, that we're all going to need support. You know, the students are going to need support, and the staff's going to need support, having been away for what's the equivalent of 3 summers. And so this is going to be something that, as in whatever form we come back, students are going to need a lot of those kind of social and mental, social emotional supports in the classes. And so it's our duty to make sure that our faculty is prepared for that. So we will be doing PD with the staff and offering that during the summer, and it'll range from trauma to just, you know, how to be able to create transition structures back into that next grade. You know, people ask about the fall again. We don't know. What we do know is the decisions we make, they'll be based on data, and they will be made primarily on the safety of our students and staff. I mean, I think Mayor Joe's been ultimately clear on that, and we will be following that guidance. There's a lot of guidance that will be coming out. Department of Education has an advisory committee that it's put together for school reopening. We don't know when to expect that guidance. They just formed the committee, I think, earlier this week. It was announced, but we will be looking to that to see, what they say. Certainly, CDC has put out some reopening guidelines. Certainly, State Health Commission and our local health commission will as well. Really, we're also looking at sort of what do we know from best practice, or what has worked and not worked in the countries as they reopen. What has happened in Germany and in South Korea and other countries as they've attempted to open their schools, France most recently. So we'll be watching that and listening and learning and doing some research on that. At the same time that locally, we'll be looking for the guidances that come out, and districts as they exchange good ideas in consortiums, superintendents and faculty, as well as, just in the region around us. We're in the urban part of the urban superintendents. There's a group of about 30 urban districts. They share many of the same kinds of issues and considerations that we'll have to look at. And so it'll be very informative to be part of that consortium. And I know the mayor is on a myriad of consortiums with other mayors. And so we'll look at all of that in partnership, city and school district together to make that plan. Considerations, I mean, for us, it's everything from the schedule. There's lots of opinions about the schedule. You'll hear AM, PM, you'll hear day on, day off, you'll hear 4-day, 10-day off, you'll hear all virtual. Again, I think we have to let some of the data lead us there, but we will be looking at A, B, C, D, multiple options. Transportation, dropping off will not look like it did before because of the social distancing requirements. How kids eat, where they eat, classrooms, cafeterias, with some kind of divider. These are the things we'll explore and look at data. Face coverings, we know we can expect. What will the face coverings be? Those will be the kinds of things that we have to look at as those practices evolve. On the health side, temperature checks, sanitation, bathrooms, how best to do the bathroom singly, again, changing furniture or fixtures. The furniture itself, everything from tables to individual desks, the direction they face, how far apart they are. Those will all be things that we will look at. Certainly the training of students and staff will be a big one. School, we're accustomed to doing school the way we do school. So a big piece of this will have to be re-educating how we do things and emphasizing with you as partners to the students the importance of all of that. So you will definitely be part of those trainings and our messaging to the students as well. Parent and visitor protocols. Our schools are open. We love
protocolos.
And, so the parent and the visitor protocols will be something that for safety purposes, we will have to revisit as well as sanitation. After school programming, what will that look like? Again, we don't have answers, but we'll be looking at various models. Sports, outdoor facilities, and then we get into the academics where we talk about assessing the students when they come back. So we know the baselines, we know where they are, what we need to work on, looking at it through the super standards and the activities the students have been doing. Where do we pick up and how do we present that so that the students don't have gaps in their learning? And in some populations, like our English language learners, we know the gap will be greater. Special education, similarly, what is the gap and how do we accelerate closing that gap? Health services and even things like the technology and the access will continue. We've solved the problem for 6 months for some of the families, but we will need to solve it for longer than that. So there's a lot to work on. One of the next steps that we're taking is we have focus groups that are going to be formed. They're cross-sectional. They will have educator voices on them. They will have, we will be sending surveys out for parents, for students, and for staff as one form of a way that you can give input. But these cross-sectional groupings will also be important because, we need to have the nurse on there. He or she has a role in the schools, guidance and counseling services, teachers, paraprofessionals, really, a myriad of a number of roles that are going to be pivotal to the reopening. So those focus groups will be looking at the research we're compiling, and they'll be making a study of it as we identify by the grade spans those best practices, and then crosswalk them with the city. We will be producing a reopening guide that will have operational, academic, policies, procedures. And so you will have that as parents well before opening. And then in terms of the training pieces, we've already started to announce the staffing, but we anticipate also working with SFLC for parents and for students as well, because they need to be brought into the fold. So really, this is going to take all of us, much like it has taken all of us in the pandemic. This is going to take all of us with the schools. We are a village. Our schools are a village. That's what makes them so successful and so special. And so we anticipate using that same approach as we go toward this reopening with whatever it will hold.
Thanks, Mary. Superintendent Skipper. And I know there'll be plenty of follow-up questions. I've seen some already queued up. This time, I'm going to hand off the presentation to Jill Latham. She's the Director of Parks and Recreation, to update you where we are in terms of our summer and other recreation program and resources. Jill?
Good evening, wonderful, awesome City of Somerville residents. So yeah, Parks and Recreation, we are going to be looking to hopefully target summer programming starting July 1st, and still getting those modification plans and health and safety plans together to ensure the ultimate safety for these summer programs with, when I say modified, I mean, so different rotations of different programs to ensure for social distancing and spacing, how we handle drop off and pick up, and looking at, hopefully opening up our pool July 1st as well. That's our target date. And looking at that as far as social distancing with the deck and the locker rooms, and having different times, the time blocks throughout the day when the pool's open and closed for cleaning and things like that. We'll be requiring that all of our participants, along with our staff, are wearing masks throughout our summer programming. And we just want to continue to offer up resources to our families and make sure that all of our youth in the city of Somerville this summer have opportunities to be outside and get some fresh air and to socialize in a healthy and social distance way. So I look forward to your questions tonight. And once again, I want to thank you guys for your patience and just your incredible compliance with this during this pandemic for the city. And this is what makes Somerville so incredible, is you all. So I'm proud and honored to serve you in any way I can. So thank you again.
Thanks, Jill. Before I hand off to Brad Rawson, Director of Mobility for the city, many of you have probably seen the announcement that the mobility team in the city released a shared streets plan to provide more walking and biking routes that allow for social distancing. And we will be piloting the first shared street route by the end of May, and more will follow citywide over the summer. The mobility team is also preparing plans for expanded sidewalks and repurposed public space in our business districts as part of our effort to reclaim the public realm and think about how do we live in a new norm, but at a human scale. This time I'm going to recognize Brad Rawson for this part of the presentation. Brad?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, friends and neighbors. My name is Brad Rawson. I serve our great city as Director of Mobility in Mayor Joe's office. I'm a Somerville resident, I'm a Somerville parent, and like so many of you, I'm balancing full-time caregiving as my spouse is on the front lines, serving our community during the emergency every day. So you have my gratitude, you have my empathy, and we're here with you. My team is responsible for a variety of transportation planning purposes. We engage with the MBTA and with Mass DOT. We engage in bicycle and pedestrian work and a variety of other topics. One of the things that our team has done during the emergency at the mayor's request is prepare a series of strategies to keep our residents and our essential workers safe as they navigate our streets. Everybody wants to talk about shared streets, and I will in a moment, but I also want to point out to you that it's bigger than just that strategy. Our city has implemented changes at traffic signals all over Somerville. No longer do you or your children need to press a button to cross the street at the vast majority of city-controlled signals. You'll notice about a 12 by 18 informational sign printed in 3 languages that tells you do not have to press the button, that in fact the pedestrian phase comes on every cycle. So that's important for all of us to keep in mind. We don't want people darting across traffic because they don't want to touch a high touch surface. In addition to that, as Mayor Joe said, we have been working on sidewalk widening projects at high queue and high volume locations. These are often in our business districts and on our transit routes. But the thing that everybody has really been asking us to talk about is how do we make better use and kind of normalize the behaviors that we see with people walking in the middle of our low volume residential streets. Clearly, we want to facilitate safe and equitable trip making, grocery, pharmacy, health clinic, and post office. And we also need to recognize that 25% of our constituents and neighbors do not operate a motor vehicle and yet still have to make essential trips, even for those who are not part of essential workforces that may still need to catch the bus or get the train to the hospitals, to the warehouses, and to so many other things that we depend on every day. So I'm excited that our team has been working for the last 8 weeks to produce a citywide network plan of what we call shared streets. Let me be very clear. These are not closed streets. Motor vehicle access is maintained for people who live on the streets, for delivery workers, and for fire and police and ambulance services. However, convenient cut-through motor vehicle traffic is discouraged through signage like you see on the slide below. This strategy has been evolved all around the planet. Dozens and dozens of cities all over Earth are taking back the public right of way, as Mayor Joe said, and making sure that motor vehicles that are using our streets are operating at a slow, safe speed and are using kind of alert driving techniques to know that people might be walking a dog, pushing a stroller. I've been teaching my 4.5-year-old to ride a bike on our low volume Somerville street, and yet it is a frightful occurrence to think about the motor vehicle who comes through at 30 miles per hour. So I'm really pleased that over the next couple of days, you will see a citywide map, and there will be an information platform and feedback mechanism on the city's Summer Voice webpage for you all to tell us what we've got right, what we've got wrong, and how to scale this program up to serve every neighborhood in the city. So with that, Mayor, I'll stop and I'll be happy to answer questions later in the program. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Do you want to now recognize the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services for the city at the forefront on our response for the COVID-19 crisis? Talk a little bit about testing and our efforts around that and contact tracing and case tracking. Doug Kress.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to start by saying thank you to all of our parents out there, my neighbors, my community members here in Somerville. Everybody's doing an amazing job really to practice all of those public health efforts that we have put in place since March. And thank you for following all of those, including those face masks, social distancing, limiting your exposure. It's been great. You know, Somerville continues to be a leader, and we're seeing that even more so now in our community testing. This allows any Somerville resident age 8 or up to be able to be tested. This is being done in partnership with Cambridge Health Alliance, and residents simply have to call 617-665-2928 to make an appointment to make this test. And we are asking everybody to make an appointment so that we can continue to have those social distancing efforts and be able to plan for this appropriately. The testing is being offered right now, right behind Somerville Hospital. Again, you do need to have an appointment, and that's by calling 617-665-2928. We have recently, just today, started to expand our testing opportunities as well. We're doing this through a partnership with Cataldo Ambulance, and we're implementing a mobile unit, and this will expand our testing reach. The reason that we are doing this is we want to bring testing to those who are most vulnerable in our community. And those are our community members, such as our seniors, in areas with limited liability or limited accessibility and mobility issues. So one of the things I've been reading a lot about on some of the chats here is that people are asking, should I get tested and why? Do we have the tests available? Yes, we do. And yes, we are encouraging people to be tested. It includes people who are asymptomatic. We know that many people out here who have the virus are not showing any symptoms, but we want you to get tested so that we will give us additional valuable information about how far this virus may have spread. Now, granted, we are testing for the virus itself, but still that's a critical part of information that we need. If you test positive, we're going to be able to help you find someplace safe to isolate and not spread that virus. We're also able to provide a variety of other opportunities and supports for people who are tested and still need to quarantine themselves in their own homes. Now, if you test negative, that's great. I mean, we want to keep people to test negative and continue to support that. This is a great baseline of information for you. So you should continue to practice those public health efforts that I talked about earlier about that we've all been talking about: face covering, social distancing, limiting your exposure, washing your hands with soap and water frequently. However, if you do begin to show symptoms, you should be able to call your PCP or your primary care provider, and we would still be able to retest you as well, just to confirm that status. If you put yourself at risk somehow in some way, yes, you should think about being retested again. The important information that we have here is that we need to figure out how far this virus has really spread. This is a very contagious virus, and we ask you, please be part of this solution. Being tested and continue to follow your public health practices is really one way to slow the spread of this virus. Together, we can do this. This is a community effort. This is a community action that we have to take together. This is impacting all of us. We do know that it's mostly impacting in a detrimental way our senior population. So we want to do this as a community. We need to do this as a community. And thank you for being part of this. We have done an amazing job so far. We want to continue that. We know that summer is coming and people want to be outside, but you still need to follow all of those public health practices. So thank you. I'm looking forward to answering your questions. With that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Doug. And folks, some of you have submitted questions beforehand, and I have them here. If you want to submit a question, you can do it through the Q&A chat or a comment on YouTube Live. Again, for either the Q&A function here on Zoom or on YouTube Live. And we'll take those questions. We'll answer as many as we possibly can before the end of the night. And those that we can't answer, we'll give you direction, and we'll be posting them on the city's website. Before I start taking questions, I just want to remind everyone to try, if you'd like to, it's a great resource. Sign up for phone, text, or email alerts at somervillema.gov/alerts. Apply for help from or donate to the Somerville Cares Fund. And the link is right here. And for community testing, as Doug and I have mentioned, here's the number. It's important that you make an appointment. We need to get some basic information, set you up for an appointment to be tested. It's very easy. So thank you for that. And at this time, we are going to go to Q&A, and myself and members of the panel will do our best to answer every question. The first question I'm going to take from the Q&A function. And Mary, I think you can answer. It's pretty straightforward. Are there going to be any announcements with school for next year made tonight? Parents like to know for what is being planned for. As I'll just answer this quick, Mary. As you heard the superintendent, we don't know for certain. We haven't received any guidance from the Commonwealth or the Department of Early and Secondary Education, Elementary and Secondary Education. But at the same time, the school department, along with the city, we're working out scenarios. There'll be more to come on this. In fact, I'll be in a conversation with municipal leaders tomorrow, and the superintendent is with superintendents and other educational leaders from the Commonwealth regularly, trying to understand how do we prepare for that new normal for schools, as well as trying to understand what expertise or guidance we can obtain and resources. So more to come. We know we're all anxious about this, but I remind you, as we think about activating any activity in the economy, in city life, or our schools, we want to get it right because we want to keep people safe. So more to come on that. Thank you for that question. The next one I'll take from one of the ones that was sent in ahead of time. And this question is from Tara Fitzgerald. Tara, thanks for the question. Summer camps have been canceled. Parents are in varying circumstances and unable to attend them. Will there be some form of socially distanced outside activity that would structure even a small part of the kids' days through the summer? Jill Latham, would you be willing to answer this? And Mary, if you want to add in?
Sure.
Thank you, Tara.
Sure. Hi, Tara. Yes, I'll talk about the Parks and Rec side. Yes, we're looking to open up our summer program on July 1st. Those can be done with our registration by calling our office, 617-625-6600, extension 2980. Danielle Palazzo was taking those reservations. So you can also look at our website to see what programs we're going to be offering. So yes, we are planning on having some summer programming this summer with social distancing and being responsible with health and safety for both the staff and the campers. Mary?
Yes, and similarly with our community schools, We're going to work closely with REC to see if a portion of community schools could be conducted outside, again, making sure that all the socially distant precautions are being taken. So we'll be working closely with REC, and we hope to have an announcement on that relatively soon.
Thank you again, Tara. And this question is from Christina Epstein. And again, some of the questions might have a similar ring. We'll still answer them. What are the options the city is considering for the fall school semester? And are those options different for the lower grades than the upper grades? When might a decision be made? Mary, you want to just answer this one again? Thank you, Christina, for that
Sure.
question.
I mean, I think in terms of the timeline, Mayor Joe indicated we're waiting on guidance from both health and education officials. I think in terms of the question about the grade spans, the answer would likely be yes. I think what we could expect of upper, middle, and high school students versus younger students using the virtual is clear. And so if we're able to with the younger students, we would like to have more physical, if that is possible. Whereas with the older students, we feel we could probably stagger the virtual more.
Yep. Another message from Christina. Again, thank you, Christina. When is a network or traffic-free, slow shared streets that families can safely walk while maintaining safe physical distancing going to be rolled out? I think, our shared street plans are starting to roll out later this month, relatively soon and throughout the summer, Christina. If you have any other questions, please submit them. Brad, that's okay. Do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Mayor. In every city where this has been successful, it has taken a number of weeks. We'll move as fast as humanly possible to get cones, sawhorses, and signs on useful routes connecting every Somerville neighborhood to groceries, food banks, post offices, and health clinics. So, as the mayor said, we'll get started immediately and keep working until every neighborhood is served.
Okay, back to those submitted in advance from Ryan Williams. Ryan asked, despite our best efforts, we cannot replace the classroom experience at home and provide our children with the same level of expertise as our incredible teachers and educational support staff. With our children undoubtedly behind entering the fall, what extra resources will the district be committing to ensure that our children make up for the lost time and get back on track? So either Mary, Christine, or Lisa, would like to take a crack at this?
Absolutely, and I'll let others chime in, but I think this goes back to using the summer months. So being able to look at the engagement tracker and being able to identify using some baseline the students that we think need the most support and have the biggest gaps. We're looking with the reading to do one-to-one. We're also looking at a math program right now. We anticipate 100 to 150 students that will be being served with that. Credit recovery, as well as some other kinds of remedial programming at the high school will be in full swing, again, online. Christine, I think you might, if you want to speak on the special education side, I know you're working closely on the IEP issues.
Yes, thank you, Mary. We've been working closely with our counterparts who are on general education, special education to look at the whole child and look at everyone's experiences. With regards to special education, we have students on IEPs who have summer services, so that's one layer of services that we would be providing over the summer, but we're also going to be looking at students and their engagement and what are the things that we're noticing, even if they don't have it on their IEP currently, how we can continue to support them.
Great. And then Sarah on the ELL side.
Yes, for English language learners, actually, we just got some good news, which is wonderful in times like these to get good news. We received from the state some data about how our English language learners are doing, and especially our newcomers did very, very well when they were assessed just in January and February. So what we know that we need to do is work very hard with our language learners who've reached a benchmark of language, but haven't been able to practice it in the kind of classroom setting. So we want to bring them back in the summer. It will be virtual, but it will be very interactive and flexible so that students can be working with teachers one-on-one in small groups and in whole classroom settings. So we're very excited to bring our language learners back up to the level that they reached just this past winter.
That's right. And I think what you're hearing is just that data is really important in all of this. So the baseline data that we're looking at for each of the students will be something that will be carried over from the summer into the fall. And then depending on what our return looks like, we'll be matching resource to that. And that may be, continued tutoring, that may be small group work, that may be some combination of virtual and in person. This really will all depend on what kinds of limitations we face given the safety in the fall.
Thanks, folks, for those answers. Next one is an anonymous question. There are hundreds of residents, especially immigrants, who are ineligible for stimulus checks or unemployment, who are going hungry. The CARE Fund is very low on resources. Can the mayor become much more visible in their fundraising effort for CARES and the Welcome Projects Fund to ensure there is much more money than there is right now? The short answer is yes. I'm happy to continue to plug those funds and advocate for them as I have for the CARES Fund. I can reach out to Ben Eshavari and others on the Welcome Project, but if the anonymous person wants to send me an email, we'll make sure we're out there advocating and promoting these funds. And thank you for your work for the immigrants in our community and our entire community. The next question is from Georgie Cohen. Parents' time is at a premium right now. When do we get our questions addressed? Mary, do you want to answer that?
So not, again, in terms of the time, we will work as quickly as we can once we have some of the information that we need from state and health. That said, Georgie, I think you know my contact, so you can reach out to me if you have a particular question. I'd be happy to talk tomorrow with you.
Great. Another anonymous question, and thank you. There's going to be a need for workers to report unsafe conditions in a confidential way, free from retaliation. Federal OSHA has been unwilling to investigate. Will the city expand its inspection capacity and collaborate with organizations that specialize in worker safety, especially those that with multilingual capacity, and enact a coordinated, collaborative strategy that ensures safe working conditions as we open the economy? Great question. Thank you. I've been speaking publicly and on television and radio about this, that we need to protect workers and their ability to report what they see. I spoke to the Attorney General about this just earlier this evening. So we are right now analyzing how we're going to do that. A lot of this reopening enforcement's been dumped on cities and towns. We are going to be out there enforcing, and we're looking for any ideas, and we're willing to work collaboratively with any organization. If you'd like to send us an email, that'd be great. But this is under conversation right now. Thank you for that question. Delivery of education. This is from Georgie Cohen again. Delivery of education in some grades at the same school, and definitely in same grades district-wide, have been radically different and largely unmindful of homes with two working parents. How will you rectify this if this lingers into the fall? Mary, would you like the question? Thank you, Georgie.
Sure. And again, I'm happy to talk about this tomorrow, Georgie, but I think in general, we will be that much smarter based on what has happened over the spring and what we've learned about remote learning. I think the state as well in its guidelines, whether it's planning for schedule, whether it's being able to create resources over the summer that then can be drawn upon that will also help the teachers. I think, as I said at the start, one of the difficulties for teachers and educators in general is they too are in a situation of having childcare at the same time that they're teaching. So really creating something that's been flexible has needed to be during this period of closure. We have the summer now in terms of planning. So for the fall, we should be ready to go. So my hope is that whatever inconveniences there's been, and I'm sure that there has been, we can rectify them and make the experience that much better for you in the fall. And hopefully it won't be 100% virtual.
Great, thanks. The next question is from submitted in advance by Stephanie Elizabeth Galatzi. Thank you, Stephanie, for this question. And is, what can the city do to help daycare stay afloat now and next year if social distancing restrictions continue? I'm gonna have Lisa Q chime in, and then I'll probably add to this.
Answer that question. As you can imagine, childcare is a very complex mix of nonprofit, for-profit, including family childcare, federally funded Head Start, and so each of those kinds of childcare require a different strategy for funding them and helping them stay afloat. The Somerville Partnership for Young Children has, along with Summer Promise and the Somerville Family Learning Collaborative, has been acting as a clearinghouse, and we've been in touch with every childcare center and family childcare provider in the city throughout this crisis. There's been ways for them to stay afloat. Many of them have applied for the Paycheck Protection loans and received them. And then Somerville Small Business Relief Fund has been one resource, although not many applied and are going to need more funding in order to stay afloat, given that they don't have tuition coming in. The city and others working also with the Office of Economic Development to think about space considerations across the city, because once childcare is able to reopen, and we anticipate that after June 29th, that we'll start to be able to reopen childcare. But like the schools, we're looking for guidance from the Department of Early Education and Care, because we anticipate that there will be fewer children and higher ratios needed. And so we're probably going to need more space to accommodate lower numbers of children and physical distancing requirements. So looking for those EEC guidelines, and also looking for a variety of funding sources. We've applied, SFLC in collaboration with Summer Promise has applied for a grant through the Commonwealth Children's Fund to support specifically family childcare for providers who are going to be ever more important once the system opens up.
Thanks, Lisa. I think you hit that, right on the head on that. And this is something we're all keenly focused on, acutely aware of the challenges of the viability of these important resources and not having access to them for our really so many working people. So it's something I'm in close contact and conversations with local and regional leaders, as well as the state. Need more to come. This next question, I'm going to combine two questions here around parks and camps. So Jill, I give these both to you. First, from Alec Desmond: when will the city be opening the parks and skate park? And then from an anonymous question: will camps be operating this summer? I think you've addressed some of this, but if you could chime in again, please.
Yes, again, we're looking to open up our summer programming July 1st. As far as other, park areas, I think there's some guidance that's coming out that fairly shortly those should be opening back up. Regarding the skate parks, that determination hasn't quite been made yet. That, along with the playgrounds, are closed, as you guys know, currently. So, but definitely those are in discussions right now, and we're working with the mayor's office and the public health department. We'll have some guidance on that.
Thanks, Joe. Another question on schools. What would the environment within the schools look like once the schools reopen in the fall? Will there be after school care? I'm going to start off and hand it off to Mary Skipper. We still don't know. As we mentioned, we're looking at about we're trying to scenarios in our mind, will all kids be in the schools at once? Will they be part of the kids 1 week, others virtual, and so forth? These are questions that the city of Somerville and Somerville Public School District are asking their colleagues and leaders at the state, at the educational and the governor's office as well. And we expect more guidance to come down. And we are trying to theorize every scenario and try to prepare for that. But there'll be a lot more to come. Mary, do you want to add to that in terms of?
Right. I mean, I think honestly, even beyond Somerville, this is what every community is struggling with right now. And I think, it's going to take some direct guidance from the state, so it gives us parameters to work in that we can then take and have situation A, B, C, D. But I think the value of going through that exercise now. So for instance, if you had half the students in on any day and you had an every other day schedule, that would be one example. In some states, they're doing a week on, week off, which can be really tough for kids because they're away from school for a whole week. Other states are doing an AM, PM. Difficulty for us is we have transportation needs. So we can't really do an AM, PM. It would double the buses. So there's some restrictions for us that we have to consider as a city that don't apply in other places, but there are some that are open to us. And so those will be the ones that we explore further, but we will do it regionally. We will look at what our colleagues are doing. We will take best practice. We will look at what has worked and hasn't worked. And then fundamentally, we have to work closely with Health and DESE to make sure that we're working within the parameters they give us.
Thanks, Mary. And again, some of these questions are going to have a similar ring to them. We understand because these are the same questions in everybody's mind. We'll try to address them all.
Yeah.
Now, this is from Ashley. Thank you, Ashley, for this question. The amount of time teachers are available to each student varies widely by grade in school. What are you doing to address this issue for the fall? My child gets 1 meeting a week, and it's unfair that some kids have 5+ meetings a week. Mary, can I hand this out to you and whoever may want to answer on this?
Right. So Ashley, I would just suggest first that you reach out to the principal to see if there's other things that your students could tap into. I think, again, this is Part of the flexibility with educators right that now that's needed is a variety of delivery. We heard from parents as well that synchronous would not work for all parents. They need the flexibility of having things that they can plug into at all times of the day, depending on if they're working or they're using the computer. So really, we've tried to sort of give instruction in a variety of ways. And whereas in some cases, it works well within a class and they may be doing more in something every single day live. So it is going to vary, but I would say if you're looking for more for your student, there are other things we can plug into. So I would reach out to the principal to start.
So we have a couple of questions around remote learning. The first, again, it was Ashley, but since it was Ashley, I'm going to ask this one first. Ashley asked, how are you handling introducing new material in the fall if we're doing remote learning?
Right. So that's going to be a lot of the work that we'll be doing this summer. Again, looking at how can we create media around new material at each of the grade spans. So that's work that we will be working on over the summer in preparation for whatever the fall does hold for us. Obviously, if teachers are back and everything is physical, they can still use those, and they probably will need to use those because we may have to go out again. In the event that, say, half the students are in and we're doing an every other day schedule, students that are home can draw on the same thing that students that are in school that day are drawing on. So we'll be doing a lot of that building and that work ahead of time during the summer.
And this is an anonymous question on remote learning still. Remote learning does not work well for families with 2 full-time working parents or single parents. How will this be addressed going forward? You've already addressed this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It doesn't. It's hard if you have two people working and you have kids, you can't also be teachers. It is tough. We're going to try. I mean, this is the reason why we hope that there are some restrictions lifted so that we're able to do something that's at least more hybrid.
Okay. This question, again, from Georgie Cohen. Social emotional needs of children who are experiencing ongoing intense trauma and isolation have been largely ignored. How will this be rectified? Let me first say, we understand, we're acutely aware of the immense emotional and mental duress this situation has caused everyone, and our kids are going through now. There's a tremendous amount of effort to support students and families with social emotional resources, but I'll hand off to Mary to follow up on that.
Yeah, actually, Liz Doncaster is on here. She's the Director of Student Services, and I know she would love to answer this question.
Hi, folks. We are really aware of how the frustration of parents with the homeschooling, trying to work remotely and also put their children on the various platforms and get them to do their work. We're also aware of, as we planned into what the new normal looks like, we're having very intense, long conversations with our counselors, with our embedded therapists. What are they hearing from kids? What are they hearing from parents? And how can we be proactive as we move into this new normal with the school year? So we are having deep discussions. We are doing some professional development for our educators so that they are ready for this student that may have had a difficult time dealing with the COVID-19 and everything that it brings, social distancing. And we are really well-versed and trying to be proactive in finding out how we can get the students ready, to give them an idea of what's coming, give the parents an idea of what's coming when that's decided. And we're going to be very clear about what's to be expected so that there's no surprises, so that it's very predictable, it's a very routine. And we're going to do the best we can with our counselors, with our teachers, with our support systems in the building. We have a great system in place, and now we're just going to bring it up to the next level so that we can care for the student that's coming in the front door of our schools, if that does happen, or if, as far as remotely, if we can support them. And I do feel we are in the planning stages, and we are ready, and we are looking forward to supporting our children in the coming school year, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and I would also say to Georgie, Georgie, if you're aware of particular families that you have concern about, you can definitely direct them to their principal. The principals are a conduit for us to be able to connect with the mental health services. And we have spaces right now in all 3 of our outside providers. So this is something, I wouldn't want to waste a minute not connecting. So if you know of families that really need supports that are not getting them, please make that connection for us. I also want to give a shout out to Doug Kress. I mean, we work really seamlessly. Many of our families have been directly impacted by COVID. that brings in and of itself, grief, lots of anxiety and fear and sickness. And, we work very seamlessly when we know a family's been impacted to ensure that family has the social emotional supports they need. Doesn't mean that we haven't missed someone. So if you know of someone, Georgie, please let us know tomorrow.
Thanks for those answers. So Laura, this is a testing question. Laura Baretsky on COVID-19 testing. Is the city actively encouraging people to get tested, even if nobody in my family is symptomatic? Where it's possible to be positive and is asymptomatic, it seems like testing might be a good thing to do for the community's greater good. Laura, thank you for the question. You are absolutely correct. All you have to do, anyone can get tested. And yes, please call to get tested. We had the number up on the slide, but I'll repeat it for you now. 617-665-2928 and schedule an appointment. 617-665-2928. And Laura, thank you again for the question. The next question is, can you comment on what next year will look like for the students? Are you looking at certain ages first, like some other countries are trying? Will it likely be a combination of smaller students in the building plus some remote? I'm just going to answer it as we mentioned. There's a lot to be decided, a lot to be determined. There's going to be more to come. Questions on everybody's mind, not just here in this region, this Commonwealth, around the country. And we will be, as soon as we have all the answers, we'll be announcing that plan, but we're analyzing many scenarios, and not every scenario is going to fit every community. For example, we have a school building that's under construction. The new building is not going to be ready for September. It'll probably be a mid-quarter opening. We'll figure that out. How's that work? And then the elementary schools are all different, and every community has their own different set of parameters or issues they have to deal with. So we're going to be getting guidance in the Commonwealth. Hopefully, we're going to put together a plan, and we'll work with the community and talk about what that plan is. But thank you for that comment. Another question is on an anonymous question. What is the word on the school budget since the hearing was canceled, or any decisions how budgeting will be done for these new needs for next school year because of COVID? We don't have any answers on the budget. We're working closely now with the schools. I'm working closely with other local leaders around the Commonwealth, the administration. We still don't know what the state numbers are going to be for cities and towns in Massachusetts in terms of the amount of local aid, Chapter 7 money going to schools. This is the next pending challenge for us. We have not only do we have an international health emergency and all the impacts on our lives and our local economy, but in cities and towns in states across the country, we face a crisis. And unless we have major infusion of our bailout of cash from federal government to states and municipalities, there's a real risk in every district around the country of a loss of programming and jobs. Our goal is to maintain jobs in all the critical programs and that infrastructure that we've built together over the years. So we're working together with the schools, with our finance team, understanding revenue numbers. Right now, revenues in the Commonwealth are projected to be decreased. I have a 25% shortfall next year, which could mean cuts in local aid. And we've lost also revenue here locally because unlike the Great Recession from 2008 to 2010, where the economy slowed and leveled off, there was a direct and abrupt cutoff of the economy locally and all the revenues that support us. So this is evolving quickly. We're also seeking legislative tools and relief from the legislature and the governor to help cities and towns to deal with cash flow and liquidity issues. That'll help us understand our financial picture better. Right now, again, it's going to be a massive challenge, but our goals are to maintain the jobs of all those important employees that we need to run the programs in our cities and our schools and for our community, and to maintain all those essential programs, not turn back the clock. It's going to be a daunting task, but we're hard at work on it. So please stay tuned. There'll be plenty of public opportunity for public presentation and comment. I'm going to be jumping around. If someone asks more than one question, I'm going to give other opportunity for people to have their question heard. And again, folks, I'm going to go right till 9 because we have a lot of questions, try to answer them all, if not most. I do want to recognize they're on the call here. Just say thank you to them for their leadership. Your new member of the City Council, Council at Large, Kristen Strezzo, from Ward 2, your Council from Ward 2, Mr. J.T. Scott, and from the School Committee, Ms. Alana Krepchen from Ward 2, Mr. Andre Green from Ward 4, and Ms. Laura Patone from Ward 5. I want to thank them all for their leadership because it has been all on deck, all aboard, hands-on effort to help everyone out to overcome this crisis. I can't thank them all enough for their leadership. The next question will be, Historically, most announcements for next school year get piled on in the last week of August. It seems like that will make a huge pressure point for parents. Will we be getting information over the summer for the next year early enough to plan? And so this was anonymous, great question. Mary, would you, or someone on your team want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case, yes, these decisions will have to be made earlier than that based on the information we have. Because you need to plan and we'll need to plan as well. So these would not be the types of things we're talking in terms of schedule, transportation, those kinds of things. Those would not be things that we would announce, like the smaller things that we announced the last week of August. This is why we're also eager to get the information from both DESE and Health.
Thank you. Another anonymous question. How will high school registration work, especially for incoming freshmen, since this year is so disrupted? Possibly even students' registration submittal.
So Regina, enrollment queen, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everybody. So registration is ongoing. The office is closed, but registration is online. We also ask parents, if they don't have access to computer, to leave a phone message and we'll call them back. So we're conducting a lot of registrations by phone. The school website has the link. Just go to Somerville Public Schools website, how to register, and then it's by group of ages specific that you can register your child. But you can also leave us a message, 617-629-5670, and we will contact you, or you can email one of us in the enrollment office. But
Thank you.
registration is ongoing.
Thank you. This is a pre-submitted question from Gregory Eli. I'm really excited that the city has decided to experiment with shared slow streets. If I want my street to become a slow street or have expanded sidewalks and increased traffic calming, how do I make that happen? In addition, with the state not planning to reopen the T fully until the final phase of the reopening, how will Somerville prevent potential crowding on T and provide a safe way for people to walk and bike that may avoid taking public transportation? Brad Rawson, would you like to answer this? And thank you, Gregory, for that question.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the important question. There's two parts to it. The first is about community involvement in the city sidewalk widening and shared streets program. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a Summer Voice platform, which is interactive and allows residents and stakeholders to contribute their observations and their requests for consideration. In terms of the larger regional transportation ecosystem, I think folks have really started to focus on the fact that even if 10% of the MBTA's 1.4 million customers per day go back to work and choose to drive instead of using transit, that can have catastrophic impacts on our communities, on our health, on our environment, and our economy. And so the mayor has asked our team to work with regional partners such as Mass DOT, the MBTA, our neighboring cities and towns, to make sure that we understand how to make transit competitive. I want to make sure that people understand that the MBTA itself is viewed as a national model in terms of sanitation and communication during the emergency, and is teaching seminars and webinars to their peer agencies all around the country. So it is safe, and working on making sure it is reliable is part of helping manage crowding. But a lot of it is also going to come back to the type of community that our residents tell us we want: better walking, better biking, for useful trips all around our great city. So this will be an ongoing conversation in the coming months, and I hope that many of you will be involved in it.
Thanks, Brad. Here's another question for you, Brad. Is there any way to make the pedestrian lights automatic at intersections so we don't have to push buttons when out walking with our kids, so touchless? You want to answer that one? It's a quick one.
Sure, Mayor. As I mentioned earlier, our team has been implementing these changes at city-controlled signals. There are about 20 city-controlled traffic signals that now run in this hands-free configuration, and the yellow signs tell you that you do not need to press the button in order to get a pedestrian phase to cross the street. We're also working with our partners at Mass DOT, looking for opportunities for state-controlled signals on McGrath Highway Route 28, on Mystic Avenue, State Route 38, and on State Route 16 out in my neighborhood. So stay tuned. This is something that we're working on every day.
So we have a couple of, I'm going to go a few questions related to, again, if school happens next year, what it'll look like and so forth. So here we go. How will schools plan for disparities in students' progress when school returns to normal session? Concerned about challenges teachers will encounter and challenges it will provide for students within the classroom. Mary?
Again, we already have engagement trackers, so we're looking at what students are doing now. We will consult with teachers. We're going to be doing some work over the summer relative to gap closure, but really the work coming back into the fall on the social emotional side will be around transition. And then we'll use that data as well as some baseline data that we'll take in the fall to determine what is the appropriate intervention for the students.
Okay.
How that gets delivered is going to depend on what the setting looks like in the fall.
Great. Will parents be able to choose to, again, another anonymous question for all of you. Thank you for the question. Will parents be able to choose to keep students home and stay remote if we have doubts about the safety of the classroom?
So we're actually looking at this actively. We want to make this an option. We do understand that that for many parents, they will want to keep students home initially. So, and we don't want to lose those students. So this is something we're actively looking at and hope to be able to do.
This would be one I'll answer. Another anonymous question. Will HVAC systems be evaluated in light of the studies about contamination with airflow? Yes, we have to understand, we're trying to understand and analyze all the operational requirements to achieve a not only successful, but healthy, ensure health and safety in the operations of our school buildings, our city buildings and the like. So more to come on that. Another anonymous question. Thank you for this. What are your thoughts on sending some grades back, for example, younger grades, transitioning grades, and not others?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that is variable as we look across districts that have already started back or in countries. We would expect that the younger kids, the physical being present is far more necessary than as the students get older and they can handle more virtual. So yes, we would be prioritizing particular grades and particular transition grades.
Great. So this is from Vika Zafran. What do public health officials say about opening pools in particular? Sharing water seems incompatible with social distancing. Jill and Doug, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Within the water, that's not really an issue with the various chemical chlorine and such in the water. You can do, that's not a big issue with the COVID. Again, social distancing within the deck and locker rooms and the entry area is much more of a concern that we will be managing. Doug, you can pipe in as well, but in the water is not looking at across the country and different things from the CDC and aquatics, the aquatics industry and things like that. In the water is not a concern at this time for COVID.
I would echo a lot of those comments that Jill just made. Thank you, Jill. I think that's a great explanation. But we are exploring what options are out there for this. But I do think that one of the things we're going to have to think about are how we going to improve those social distancing and make sure those social distancing activities do happen on the deck when they're in the locker rooms, when they're queuing up, even to enter into the building, and limiting the capacities that we would have within a facility.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, this has been and we have to, whatever you want to do, we want to ensure public health and safety. If we can't, those activities won't happen. But I was very frustrated with the Commonwealth leading off with opening golf courses. And I remind them, many people in our city look across McGrath Highway at Forest Park or one or the other pool, and that's their Martha's Vineyard, their Nantucket, their Cape Cod, and ask themselves, will I be able to relieve myself during the summer months from the hot conditions in my second or third or upper story apartment with my kids? Can I get to those shade trees or to the pool for some cool, refreshing relief? And these are questions we have to answer for that. And that's where the equity is lacked in the Commonwealth's plan. And we're engaging them, and we'll be keenly focused on what those guidelines are. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure we can ensure health and safety while we're doing it. So there'll be more to come. From Georgia again, does summer programming include SPS day camp?
So that's one of the things that we're looking at right now. The summer camp, I think I think you might be talking about community schools. So with community schools, we're looking with REC to see how community schools may be able to have a portion that is in person.
Great. A REC question for Jill. You said camps will open July 1st. When will we know when to sign up for summer camps?
Yes, so we can go to our website, summervillerac.com. You'll see what programs we have to offer. You can also call Danielle Palazzo at 617-625-6600, extension 2980, and she can manually put you on that waiting list as well.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions, Brad. I'm going to give it to you. Mobility and open space. The first from an anonymous submittal. Thank you. I really appreciate the effort to make streets and intersections more pedestrian friendly. Is there anything we can do to mitigate the troubling increase in speeding traffic? Thank you for this question.
Thanks, Mayor. The city has an established traffic calming program that is distinct and different than the shared streets program that we have been investigating. So anytime you see a crosswalk that is painted with red behind it or tan bump outs that create the illusion of a concrete bump out, know that our team has been there because we're concerned about travel speeds in your neighborhoods. As we speak, I've got a staff person supervising a pavement markings crew installing traffic calming paint in a few different neighborhoods this evening. The flex posts that we have deployed with great success in a variety of locations are also proven to slow down motor vehicles. And I also want to point out for the audience that our research has indicated that even adding a simple bike lane often creates enough of an optical illusion that it causes motorists to slow down. We had some great before and after data on Cameron Avenue on the west side of the city and Temple Street in the Winter Hill neighborhood last year. So you can email transportation@somervillema.gov with any specific observations that you have. And I'll be happy to assign my team of planners and designers to go out and evaluate those locations and slow the cars down in every place we can.
Thanks, Brad. I'm going to have you answer this one as well regarding Prospect Hill Park. I'm wondering if there's any timeline for Prospect Hill Park opening again. There is very little green space in our neighborhood, and we'd love to have that space available. That project has recommenced, if I'm not mistaken, right, Brad? And talk a little bit about that timeline for opening.
Thanks, Mayor. The fantastic public space and urban forestry team led by Luisa Oliveira has been managing the Prospect Hill renovation. The contractor is close to finishing their work. They've been on pause throughout the emergency, and they're just in the process of restarting. So they've got a little bit of site work left. And actually, they'll be building out traffic calming bump outs as well, Mr. Mayor. So Monroe Street, Prospect Hill Parkway, slower than they were last year. That's some of the last components of the contractor's work. So I would say, mid-late summer, folks can expect that project to be complete, knock on wood.
Great. I'm going to read off a couple of questions from those that we received in advance. For Doug Kress, I would say you could probably answer this one. If there is a physical school, will there be any changes to current health guidelines such as fever-free for 24 hours? Will it be increased? How will you handle cases of strep that causes a fever? Doug, do you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. Yes, we are re-looking at all of our guidance that we have in front of us right now. We are entering into a new world. We have to look at that and make adjustments to our protocols that we have in place. So we are looking at all those over the summer, and we'll have those ready for people. So keep your eyes open as we do the first get to know your school nurse newsletters out there. So keep your eyes open for all of that as well.
Thanks, Doug. This one is for Mary and the school team. What supports, as well as Doug, I'd say, what supports are teachers getting to help with the emotional trauma these children have gone through and will continue to go through? Thank you. Great question.
It is a great question. So this is what I spoke of earlier, that during the summer, we'll be offering PD for teachers. The focus of that PD will really be about social emotional. What are the types of trauma students are experiencing, how to recognize the signs. Liz and her team will be working closely with staff. We have student support teams in each of the schools. They're meeting currently, and we will disseminate training through them as well for the staff. We're hoping to have that for the summer so that that's all front loaded. But it's an extremely important question and point. Just the fact that students have been dysregulated for so long, it's going to take them a longer period of time when they come back. And then depending on what they've experienced, they're going to need additional help through that. So teachers will be the first line, and then the counselors as well. So we'll have both available.
In addition to that, and Mary had mentioned it earlier, they are great the schools and HHS have a great partnership. We truly do work together on a lot of these issues, and we have an amazing clinical use specialist, Sarah Skonechny, who works very closely with all of Mary's team to work with the students, do the assessments, but also is working with the staff and helping with some of that guidance and providing some supports for them and coming together, developing PDs for both staff and teachers, and also some of the other staff that are around in the city. We all are going to face a lot of mental health challenges whenever we come out of this. I mean, this has been a challenging pandemic that we've all been living through. So we're all going to have to support each other. So we are here for one another, and we have some great team members who are doing that work.
Great, thanks. I'm going to have a couple of testing questions here. So the first one from JD. Thanks, JD. Is the test, it must be the testing through CHA, an antibody presence test? If not, when will the antibody presence test be available? Thank you.
That's a great question. The test that we are actually doing for our community testing is the nasal test. So it's actually testing for the virus itself. It is not the antibody test. I think a lot of people may have heard about a variety of antibody tests that are out there. The validity rate of those are not very high right now. However, that is changing on a daily basis. And as we see those improve, and we know that they are going to be improving every single day, we also know that FDA will soon approve a couple of them, or at least we're hoping that they will be approved. And we in Somerville are exploring that option as well. How do we look at that and bring antibody testing to our residents? Because that'll be another piece of the puzzle that we can put together as we look at this whole pandemic.
Thanks. What about this is from an anonymous person. Thank you for this question. What about my personal information if I get tested?
Great question. Similar to any other communicable disease, that stuff is tracking, but it is all medically confidential information. So that is stayed just like any other medical record.
Great. And this is from school committee member Ilana Krepchen. Thank you, Ilana. How many tests has Somerville conducted?
So I can give you the numbers of what we test up at our community testing site, but we also know that people are testing in a variety of places throughout the region. It's not just here in Somerville. And we've already tested over 2,100 people in our community testing site that's only been open for a couple of weeks. We're going to see that expand as we open up the mobile testing site as well.
Thanks. This is back to Mary and the school team. Our Somerville schools and DESE actively researching best practices in other school systems around the world that have remained open or are now reopening. What are some of the takeaways that you have gained so far from the experiences in other countries that have done this? Great question.
Yes, I mean, this is evolving. I mean, as you know, many of the countries have just opened. So we're looking at South Korea, we're looking at France, China, you know, to really sort of see what's working. In some of the cases, some of the schools have had to close immediately. And so then the question is, you know, what could have been done differently to start? I think, you know, scheduling calendar is one of the areas we're looking at. You know, the on-off or the week on, week off, every other day. Some have opted to do mostly virtual. So we're looking at all of that and what the trade-offs are. I mean, I think we, if at all possible, we don't want to do all virtual. We want to find a way to be able to bring our students back into the buildings. But then, you know, there's just a lot of lessons gleaned around things like, you know, the cafeterias and how to structure the cafeterias. Some have chosen to put fixtures in the cafeterias, whereas others have chosen to do eating in community. Small group, keeping students in small groups so that from a contact tracing standpoint, if a student's impacted or infected, it's a certain number of students as opposed to an entire class. Reducing the number of students in it in any time is a big one, and how they're using space is a big one. Using the outdoors where possible, using all parts of the school. Those could be the hallways, those could be the big common spaces, but really rethinking how classrooms are configured, how students move in them, and then how students move throughout the schools. The parent and visitor protocols that I spoke about earlier, that's another one on limiting the amount of outside people into the schools. Even though as parents, you're part of the community, every time somebody new comes into the building, it's that much more of a risk, both to the children and to the person coming in. And then, you know, certainly looking at furniture, there's been a big push in education toward tables, grouping, small group work. However, you know, now looking at desks, how do we stagger the desks? If we are using tables, how do we potentially put a student at each table as opposed to together? Cubbies trays are another one. How students keep their belongings, keeping them together and they travel with them. Or do we, rotating teachers and leaving the students in the small group in the classroom as another way to minimize kid contact between the classes. So there's a tremendous amount that is getting put out there in a short amount of time. The question is going to be, what does data pan out as the best practices? And I think, unfortunately, we don't have enough of that yet. But by the time we're making these decisions, each week we become that much more, smarter about it and more informed about it. Similarly, at the state, they're doing that same level of research. That's the goal of that advisory. Right in our own backyard, there's something happening with Harvard Business School that they're putting together a cohort of districts that will be able to research this issue. So, we will be looking at all of this data and making decisions, but doing it in a timely manner so that, you have the information you need to plan in the fall.
Thanks. And here you go, Mary. And I have another question for you. For any parent who may want to homeschool for the time being, is there a way to save our seat at a current school for when life returns to something resembling normal? Under normal circumstances, I understand why this wouldn't be possible.
Mhm.
These are extraordinary circumstances. Thank you for the question. Whoever sent it in.
Yes, no, it's actually a really good question. I think my comment earlier about offering a virtual opportunity, my hope is that rather than withdrawing entirely to homeschool, that you may be able to take advantage of whatever virtual offer we will have and continue to work with your current school as opposed to entirely leave.
Thanks.
So
Great. Folks, we have almost 20 minutes left. I'm going to plow through as many questions as possible. For those questions that don't get answered, we put it on the chat function. You can visit somervillema.gov/virtual town hall, and we'll answer them online. I'm going to try to focus on questions that have not been asked yet. Here's a couple regarding shared streets, Brad. Is the shared streets temporary for COVID? That's one. That's from Kim. And also from Kim, once traffic comes back, will we need the streets for vehicles? Thanks, Kim.
Thanks for the questions. This program is intended as a pilot, and so it is associated with the current emergency. Like everything we do, we will be collecting information on its effectiveness. And often what we have found is that our temporary measures often help us customize the final construction. Think about Lower East Broadway in East Somerville, where we have 15-foot wide sidewalks. We're able to kind of use paint and flexible tools to often test the traffic calming benefits of these different types of strategies. So we will be monitoring all of these locations, but they are viewed as an experiment and as a pilot. In terms of the question about traffic returning, one of the things that has characterized my 13 years of public service in this great city is that no matter where you go, everybody says there are too many motor vehicles moving too fast on my quiet residential street. And so it is incumbent on us to always be looking for solutions and make sure that folks who need to use those streets, residents, visitors, deliveries, and emergency responders can continue to do so, but that for all of the folks who are just cutting through our neighborhoods and don't start or end their trip here, don't do their business here, and don't serve us, that frankly, they stay on the freeway. So I hope that is helpful.
Thanks, Brad. And for Jill, a question from an anonymous person. Thank you for the question. Again, can Jill clarify, is the Somerville Rec Summer Camp canceled? If no decision is set today, when do you anticipate this announcement being made? Thank you for the question.
Hi, yes, we are planning on having summer programs. I do realize I just found out from one of the questions on the chat that the website was incorrect, that it is July 1st, so we're looking to open up summer programs, so those are not canceled. That website is being corrected, so thank you for the chat person who put that question in, but yes, we are doing summer programs starting July 1st.
Great. Next anonymous question. Thank you for this. My wife and I wear masks when we're out. Thank you for doing that. But our 4- and 2-year-old refuse to keep masks on. We understand it's tough to do. Appreciate the effort. Will reasonable mask accommodations be made for young children and those with special needs when school resumes? In short, and maybe you can answer this question, Dr. Yes, and we're evaluating how to do that.
Correct.
It would look like.
Correct. Doug and I will, Mr. Kress and Director Kress and I will work closely, as will Christine Trevisoni, the Director of Special Education, to make sure that there's an appropriate accommodation for a particular student with special need or with a young student that's having difficulty sensing something on their face.
Here's a question from Sean. It's either Ballin. I think it's Ballin. I hope I didn't mess that up, Sean. The city seems to be ahead of the state in DESE. Does it matter what they suggest, given that Somerville is so high, because of Somerville's density? so densely populated, and what applies our communities in difference, for example, different from the governor's plan. Let me repeat that. Does it matter what they suggest, given that some of us are so dense, and what applies to our community is different? So in general, I'll speak to the governor's plan because as you've seen at the beginning, cities like Somerville and other communities move quicker to close schools as well as school districts and enact stay-at-home advisories as well as other measures to try to contain the initial outbreak. And as part of the reopening, some cities like Somerville are moving at a slower, more deliberate pace. In general, we are allowed to supplement, to add to the governor's orders, not weaken them. And so in general, yes, in terms of schools, it's the same with some distinguishing characteristics. And Mary, do you want to add to that?
Sure. There was a question here that was relative, and it was the question about the 180-day requirement. You know, that would be an example where DESE has to give relief. That would be something we couldn't just go out and do our own thing. In most cases, DESE is giving guidance. It's not necessarily a requirement, but then there are some that they have control to give a requirement over. So it's going to vary. The 180-day is a good example. I think in the case of the remote learning plans, they gave strong guidance, particularly in the second one. You know, we veered from that a bit. You know, they really promoted mostly asynchronous. We actually put live platform on there. You know, they put down all standards, which we felt was not possible to teach in that amount of time. So we looked at the super standards and we further refined them. And I think, you know, at day's end, that's what most districts did. So again, where it's guidelines, we can certainly take liberty with them. Where there's an actual requirement, like the 180-day requirement for school attendance, we need to seek relief from them.
Thanks. This is from an anonymous person. Thank you for this next question. We've heard some about business and school reopening plans and health guidelines, but what about socializing with friends and family? When and how can our daughter get together with her best friends? When can we have dinner with ours? Does the test track framework give us a path to spending physical time with people? I'm going to answer and then have Doug chime in. I want to be clear, and I think it's important we're clear, honest, and ethical to the public in our response. This virus is not going away. It's still as highly contagious as ever and deadly. People will continue to be sick and people are going to continue to die. Our plans and what we've been advocating for and trying to model here in Somerville is preparing for the resurgence. We are not out of the woods. And this, people's lives literally hang in the balance. It depends on our ability to keep away from others. Social distancing, the new normal, wearing face covering, minimizing gatherings so very small numbers are going to be with us for a while. And people ask all the time, well, what will school look like in the fall? Will we open? Will we have Halloween? That depends on what each and every one of us does between now and then. The social compact with one another, to our friends, our families, our community. If we do not begin adapting to the new norm, and if we do not religiously adhere to the guidelines and recommendations of health experts and epidemiologists, then the resurgence will hit us worse than what we're facing now. And that will have catastrophic consequences on people's lives. People will get sicker, people will die. Our economy will take a bigger hit, if you can imagine it. And all those things we want to do and get back to sooner will not occur. So things are up in the air because we just don't know how big of a spike that resurgence will be. And it will depend upon each and every one of us. And I want to thank you all because all your sacrifices have paid off now. So moving forward, this is going to be critical. And how well we adapt to this will dictate when we can do all these other things. I don't know if Doug, you wanted to add to that.
You know, Mayor, I think you said it really well. And I think it really also comes down to a lot of trust and where we put our trust and everything else like that. We have done such a great job of really isolating, you know, putting ourselves and having our close-knit families together and being able to survive this virus. As we start to let that down, there's a risk. We're putting ourselves at risk. So it's about trust and it's about risk. And you have to figure out that balance for yourself. I agree. We want to give you the guidance to make decisions. And that's the important piece of that. We hope that you're going to side with us. We're encouraged that you're siding with us because this is the way that we're going to slow this virus so we can get back to a new normal. And it is going to be different. We have to understand that as well.
Thanks. A couple of school questions here. From Laura first. Are there any plans to expand testing to younger children? actually, this is a health question, Doug, as well, especially as plans are being made for reopening schools and playgrounds. Doug, you can answer. This is the COVID testing.
Yeah.
As a resident, you can be tested.
Yes, let me reiterate that again. You can be tested. And right now, the tests that we're doing are usually for people over the age of 8. I think one of the things that we have to explore is making those swabs a little bit smaller so that they can fit into the young person's nose. And I think that's the biggest difference that we've had so far in looking at this. So we are exploring those options that are out there.
Thanks. Anonymous question. Thank you for this. If schools are open in the fall in some capacity, I would want to add a request for consideration for entirely online options for families who may not feel safe sending their kids, a child with asthma, for example. Thank you. Mary, I think you already talked about the.
Yes, no, I appreciate the question. And yes, that is something that we are planning to be able to offer. And we're working on that actively. We do recognize that some families or students would, particularly also families that may have somebody with comorbidities or vulnerabilities of health at home, they may not be able to take the risk of the student coming to school. So we will have an option.
A related question. I'm, again, anonymous, thank you. I'm concerned once we are back to a new normal that families that continue to send their kids to school when they're clearly sick, will our schools' health rules change? Will those students stay in nurse's office all day? At this point in time, we need to focus on the health of all students. Perhaps Mary, Doug, you may want to both comment on this.
Yeah. So this will be working closely with the school nurses and health services. Most of the best practices that are popping up in the other places include everything from the temperature checks to multiple temperature checks during the day upon arrival, having isolation areas within the nurse's office or other areas of the school, and really the messaging, which is to the viewer's point, which is we need all parents to make sure that if students are showing symptoms, they stay home. Same thing with staff. If they're showing symptoms, they need to stay home because it's about other people's health as much as it's about their own.
Yeah, and I would add to that, as I said earlier, we are relooking at all of our guidance and all of our policies that we have in place. This is the new norm that we have to think about.
Thank you for that answer. From Barbara Halpenny. Thank you, Barbara, for this question. If we previously didn't register a pre-K student for community schools summer program, and there is going to be some kind of offering, will there be another opportunity to register? And/or can Parks and Recreation consider adding summer outdoor distance opportunity for pre-K age, even very part-time? Would love to have a chance for my child to get out and have a fun couple of hours a few times a week. This is from Barbara. Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, so I spoke with the director of community schools today at length. We will be able to open up some additional slots. So once we get this worked out and we can look at the guidelines with REC to know what the physical component will be, so we can communicate that with parents, and that should be relatively soon, we will be able to then open some additional slots. My understanding is we have 170 people signed up. 200 people signed up, 170 students is the height of each week. And so she felt comfortable that we could exceed the 200. So we will be able to open up some additional slots.
Great. And Jill, do you want to talk about the additional rec programs for pre-K kids?
I think, yes, definitely. I think we can definitely look into that. We have our Kid Stop program that's going to be going on this summer. So that's also a Parks and Recreation program. That's for those younger kids. That's going to be happening this summer in a different location this year, but that's also going to be posted on our website with our plans for enrollment for that.
Along the recreation front, for an anonymous question, thank you for this. The rec pages show that summer programming for sports like flag football, soccer, etc., which are interactive sports that don't allow social distancing, will these be implemented in the summer with guidelines so that our children will be safe? What about water sports, kayaking? Will they be disinfected prior to someone else's use? I'll start off first, Jill. The Commonwealth will be issuing their guidelines for phase 2 organized sports activity, club sports, soccer, all the organized sports, indoor and outdoor, whether it's lacrosse, baseball, soccer, indoor basketball camps, all that for the entire Commonwealth. We're awaiting those. And Jill, did you want to add to that?
Yes, I totally agree, Mayor. And also for our Parks and Rec programs and looking at different various clinics, will be with health and safety in mind and social distancing with our sports clinics that we're going to be offering. So yes, all those things will be taken into consideration. And also looking at the boat rentals, the boathouse, all those rentals will have health and safety plans, and those canoes and kayaks would be wiped down prior to and after, a rental for those aquatic endeavors.
Great. The next question is, when will the parks and playgrounds open? Is it up to you or the governor? We will await the governor's guidelines moving forward, but like all other decisions, we will rely on science and data and what is best for our community to ensure public health for everyone prior to activating any activity, whether it's business, whether it's operations of the city, or people out recreating, and this including parks and playgrounds. Do not expect all facets of all playgrounds and parks, including basketball courts, to open at once. We need to be very careful. We need to be able to measure these actions when we take these steps. Again, we need to ensure public health and safety. So please stay tuned. Those decisions will be rolling out in the near future. Another question, I'll answer this as well. Does this public health crisis make the city view future city planning and to contain density? Not around density, but I think as a society, we should ask ourselves, where are we failing? We failed miserably nationally. There was no leadership. There was no national plan to test, to track, to trace, and we're catching up. And at the state, we're barely catching up. It should make us all question ourselves about preparedness. In Massachusetts, more than 6,100 people have died thus far, and that count is rising. We will continue to look at this and learn, I hope, to understand how do we as a community, as a Commonwealth, and as a country plan for public health crises and invest more in health. It certainly made it glaringly obvious that the health system isn't working for everyone. It's certainly making glaringly obvious that the economy doesn't work for all. Not everyone can access all the resources for assistance that are being placed out there. And it certainly makes it glaringly obvious that vulnerable populations, Black, brown people, immigrants, our elders, are considered a statistic. These are lives, these are souls as part of our communities and our families and our neighborhoods. So we need to keep that in mind. So I hope we learn this painful lesson as we plan for the future. But thank you for that question. Guidelines for masks. This is an anonymous question. And by the way, we have about a few minutes left. We're going to get through as many questions as we can. And again, any questions that don't get answered, it's on the chat function. You can visit somervillema.gov/virtual-town-hall, and they will be answered. Guidelines for masks. There are a few studies suggesting it is more dangerous to wear one than not to. An infection could go right in the brain, and viruses tend to go right through the mask. Could you make it so that people want to wear one, put one on? People that don't or can't wear a mask go out without one. I have a medical reason and cannot wear a mask, but people are harassing me in the street. Kids should not be required to wear one. Please help me. You might end up with a sicker population than healthier. If you have an underlying medical condition, our rules and mandates clearly state we are going to work with you. You're not going to get fined if you have an underlying condition that does not allow you to wear a mask. Just like if you have a 2 or 3-year-old that keeps taking the mask on, as long as you're showing a good faith effort, you're not going to be fined. We understand that. There are studies. There was one that was released today, talked about a study in China that masks are very effective in interrupting the transmission of the virus from one person to another. And Doug, do you want to add to that? And thank you for this question, by the way.
No, I would agree. I mean, I think, the study itself that you were talking about earlier today in China really does show that it is protecting the others that are out there. It is containing any of those droplets that are coming out of other people's body or coming out of your body and spreading that virus, but it's also protecting you from any way of inhaling some of that as well. So those are the important things that we want to think about. And keeping those masks in place is an important piece of that.
Thanks. This is Jesse Klingen, the Ward 4 City Council, submitting a question on behalf of a constituent. And it states, I love the idea of shared streets, but under the shared streets program, abutters are allowed down closed streets to get to their homes. What about delivery vehicles such as UPS? Will they be allowed to enter streets for deliveries, or will our shared streets result in incomplete deliveries, forcing residents to have pickup packages at service locations? Or will the city work with those delivery services to deliver items on foot? Brad, could you answer this? And thanks, Jesse, for relaying this.
Yes, thanks for the question. I want to reiterate that delivery vehicles have unimpeded access to shared streets as they've been deployed in dozens of cities around the continent and around the world. So there's an established way to get in touch with these companies, and we'll make sure that they know so that our residents are not losing pickups and deliveries.
Great. The next question is for me. You mentioned that you would address places of worship, but have not. When will you expand the social distancing guidelines to allow people to worship at their place of choice and safely measures in place? Well, thank you for the question. You hit the nail on the head. It has to be able to be done safely. Every experts uniformly agreed, activating houses of worship is very dangerous. So right now it's up to 10 people maximum. And we are going to be I'll be having a meeting next week with the leaders of all the interfaith leaders around the community. And we're all aligned to try to do this in a safe manner. But we've seen from around the world, here in California, 2 examples. One person at a church was the vector for more than 70 cases of transmission. In another city, I think it was either Sacramento or another one, more than 180 cases of transmission. It was announced today or yesterday, 2 churches down south had to close for a second time because the clergy and members of the congregation became infected with the virus. Churches and congregations or activities where people come to congregate, where they are connected to broader networks of people, are highly risky, quite risky for transmitting the virus. And that's something we have to pay close attention to. We're going to activate that more when it is safe to do so. And we are relying on epidemiologists and leading experts to help guide us to that decision. I want to go celebrate my faith and my church more than anyone else. And we know we need this as part of our emotional healing and release. We're acutely aware of that. So we appreciate your patience, and we're going to be working with all the houses of worship to do this in a safe manner. So we're going to do one more question, folks, and then we're going to wrap up. And thank you again. And for anybody who did not have their question answered on the Zoom meeting tonight, it will be answered online at somervillema.gov/virtual town hall. And let me pull up the question. Are we talking about a virus that has a 98.9% survival rate? Are we looking at the same data? Why are we not listening to doctors speaking up? We must quarantine sick people, not healthy. Eventually the truth comes out. Hope you're on the right side of history. Good luck. The decisions you are making are not easy to make. And thank you for your help, but be mindful of all the information coming your way. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for the question. And you're right, we should look at all the information that's at our disposal. And we should rely on science and expert, keeping health at the forefront, being guided by equity and ensuring safety for all. You're right, this was a blunt instrument at the front of this crisis because we failed as a society to protect everyone. We had no national leadership and no national plan. So as the virus hit this part of the continent and our states and our cities, we were forced to treat everyone in a broad brush, to lock everything down in order to mitigate. We were beyond containment. Moving forward, to avoid that sort of blunt, broad stroke approach, we are going to need testing, viral testing, serology, case tracking and contact tracing to a level that will allow us to intervene strategically and surgically. So if there is a spike or an outbreak in the resurgence in a city like Somerville, or a couple of cities in our county or region or a neighborhood, we can respond to it strategically, surgically, and bring the resources necessary to contain the outbreak during the resurgence. Otherwise, we face a resurgence that will overwhelm us worse than what we're experiencing now. And if we don't step up individually and continue to do what we have to do to stay socially distant, to cover our nose and mouth when around people, to wash our hands, to take all the necessary steps as part of that social compact, then we face a bigger challenge moving ahead. That is more people getting sick, dying, and our economy not recovering to what we hope it to be. We have a long way to go, folks. This virus is going to be with us for years. We've made gains so far, but I want to remind people more than 6,100 people have passed away in the Commonwealth, and tens of thousands, almost 100,000 in the United States. We have a long way to go, and we're all going to get through this together. We appreciate all that you've done. For myself, everyone on this call, and everyone who volunteers and works in the city every day at the front lines. We thank all of you for looking out for one another, for embracing each other, for pitching in and volunteering to help. We promise to be honest, ethical, and upfront and transparent with you about our decisions and why we're making our decisions. But we do so again guided to ensure first the public health and safety of everyone in our community, to do our part to contain this pandemic and stop its spread, and to make sure we can get to the other side of this thing and get back to a normal as we remember it. Thank you for everything you've done to help us overcome this crisis. Thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to having more meetings with you, and we will, as we begin to roll out plans or approaches to open our schools, hopefully in the fall, activate other sectors of our lives and the economy. We appreciate your input. Keep sending your questions and ideas in. Thank you very much. And thank you to all my fellow panelists and Superintendent of Schools, Mary Skipper, Stay safe, Somerville, and God bless. Have a great night.
Good night, all.